Listo, bienvenidos a una lucha más. Ya saben qué es una lucha más. Una lucha más es la documentación del día a día de este loco estudio de videojuegos llamado Amber KO. What? Microphone?
Yeah.
All right, so. Bienvenidos a este estudio. Bienvenidos a este estudio que se llama Amber KO. Ahorita estamos acompañados, estoy muy emocionado de poderles decir que tenemos elementos de Amber que vienen de otras partes, que vienen específicamente de Estados Unidos y que van a pasar lucha más con nosotros. Vamos a hacer esta versión en inglés y me encanta que podamos hacer algunas versiones así. Así que por favor, si quieren hacer preguntas en español o en inglés, háganlas. De todos modos, por allá nos van a estar diciendo las traducciones. Y bueno, first of all, guys, welcome. Thank you for being over here. Thank you for being with us.
Hey, thanks for having us. That's great.
Hey guys, I need to ask you for a favor. I would need to just tell to the camera your name. What do you do over here at Amber? And what's your specialty or your discipline, right? Sure. So from left to right, Brad.
Yeah, my name is Brad McBurdy. I'm the technical art director here at Amber. And my background is everything from character animation to directing animation with companies like Disney and a lot of startups.
Recently producing some really high quality Apple Arcade games. Yeah, so I've been a little bit all over the industry. Also, I love teaching and helping people kind of figure out what their dream is.
Awesome, thanks.
My name's
Next.
Stone Perellis. I have 24 years in the game industry, primarily in RPG and MMO games, but I've had a chance to work in mobile games and recently just joined Amber as a creative art director. My strong suit is illustration, conceptual design, modeling, and texturing, but I'm a generalist and I've also served as a teacher at several schools and universities, one university. And I really,
Which one?
Cal State Fullerton and Laguna College of Art and Design. But I taught just a specialty class of character design for entertainment art. So I really love mentoring students, helping them get good at entering the industry or to harness what their skills are and character design.
Awesome. Michael.
And I'm Michael Closkins, sometimes a technical director, sometimes just lead programmer, but been in the industry for like 12, 13 years, something like that. Always been a programmer, always just really enjoyed making the games, making things happen, making people's dreams come true. And that's me.
That's Morpheus, basically, or Neo, some of it too. All right, guys. So thank you for being here with us. I mean, for us, it's just like kind of weird to have someone that actually just speaks English. So thank you. And I really wish we could have more people from Amber from all over the world. We're super excited. As always, guys, that we got a studio in Montreal. We got a studio, obviously, in Botoșani, which is like Ciudad Guzman from Romania. And we have like people in Bucharest. We have people in LA, Frisco, San Francisco, and obviously over here in Guadalajara. So we're the second largest studio in Amber by now.
Nice.
In a year. So that's been quite hectic and crazy for us because we were 30 and we grew up to be 154. Guys, this has been nuts for us. It's been crazy hard, but
And this
crazy
growth happened in
cool.
1 week.
And basically, if it had been 1 week, that would be dead by now.
All during COVID, too.
All during COVID too. Right. So yeah. So first of all, thank you guys for dealing with our fellow Mexicans because I know we've been like bothering you a lot. But have you ever been in this situation before? Have you ever been in a studio that has grown this much in a year? Because I know that, for example, Bio, our head of R&D, I was just like making a joke with him. I was like, dude, I'm dying over here. And he went like, EA, 1,800 guys, And now I was there from the very beginning. And you will survive, Jorge. And I go like, fuck you. And it just, I love you, but oh my God. What? Question. Okay.
In RPG games, what part of the programming is the hardest part?
I do art.
So maybe the program. Well, I don't know. Have you ever done an RPG game?
I haven't programmed an RPG. What was the full question again?
What's the
hardest part?
Which is the part of the hardest part?
Hardest part of programming an RPG.
I have a funny story about this. It's not going to be helpful.
Yeah, go ahead first.
So,
let me think about this.
My first foray into video games was when I was maybe, 10 or 11, and I started programming my own dungeon crawler in Q Basic.
Oh my god!
Right? So I was. The thing is, at the time, I was the TA for the computer lab, and we're supposed to be cleaning computers and whatnot. But I was just got the Q Basic book and teaching myself things, and I quickly realized that the inability to like store things in an array made it almost impossible to like have like a real inventory. And so yeah, I decided, you know what I'm really good at is drawing.
Yeah, that reminds me of the first game I tried to make.
Yeah.
I took a programming class in high school, the only programming class I could offer, and it was in Visual Basic. So
Yeah.
I tried to, if you don't know Visual Basic, it like has all the Windows pop-ups, and like you can just add like images and stuff to it. So I tried to make a game out of that, and like went really top heavy. So like I made a character and I made an enemy, and then I started making death animations for all of them. So you could die in 5 different ways before you could really go to the next screen. You could light trees on fire before you could really like do much of anything. So the whole game I made was like you could walk through a forest that infinitely repeated, and you got into random battles with a snake or a like a mummy type monster, and if the mummy monster killed you, you like turned into mud, and if the snake killed you, you turned into like poison. But I mean, that was it. That was the whole game. There was no actual game to it. It took me so long to do all of that that like.
How old
that's
were
how I
you,
joined-
man?
Like probably 16 years old.
Wow,
Yeah.
dude.
You know, I might not be able to speak to what's hard about programming it, but I can say what were the driving things that got me into RPGs. When I was a little kid, my family gave me some birthday money. They all pitched in, and they took me to the toy store, and they had this book on Dungeons and Dragons, and I bought it, and there was nobody to play the game with. Does it stop?
No, go ahead.
And so I went ahead and
That can be a microphone. Connect it.
got the book, started memorizing it. We're good?
No, keep it going. Sorry.
Okay. Memorized the book.
Trying to get fancy.
Oh, there you go. A few technical hurdles here.
Give it back.
Like humbled
Sorry,
at
son.
brag about where he's been, but when he talks about being in RPGs, he started at Black Isle, which is like one of the top quality studios of RPGs.
You started
I got to work on Icewind Dale. I got to work on one of the Fallout games, not the original. They had a different team do that, but Black Isle for a while was the place to go if you wanted to do RPG sprite-based games. So they did Baldur's Gate, and they had a lot of other studios.
Oh, dude.
And that studio's name,
Vintage games.
Right.
yeah, I now BioWare and other companies are under that collaborative umbrella, but I got to join that community of people. But growing up, I didn't have anybody to play Dungeons and Dragons with, any of these games, so I just memorized the book, started drawing pictures, and then I'd watch kung fu movies with some of my friends, and we'd tape cardboard all over ourselves and take broomsticks, and then we'd have little battles. And I'm glad we never got hospitalized, but that was the closest we got to live action role play. But we were always, and then my dad, he hung around a lot of really interesting people. He got in a little bit of trouble, but I got to meet all these unusual personalities. And so I got really good at drawing villains and really good. I'm like, no, that's not what they act like. I know this one guy that my dad knows, and he's crazy. And these were
Got
all,
him as a reference
yeah,
that you based on.
I didn't grow up with a lot of money. I grew up poor, so I got to meet a lot of different kinds of people. So the community shaped my idea of RPGs.
I just thought of something that's probably relevant to the person who asked the original question about RPGs.
Yeah.
And that is the programming test at the studio that I was at just before Amber. The programming test was designed to design an inventory system for an RPG. And they were really looking at how you organized sorting and storing things, and how you organize handing data off from like an in-game user interface to like a server component.
Oh, shit.
Because there wasn't a right way or a wrong way to do it. There's a million ways you can do all those tasks. But what our director of engineering wanted to see was that your thought process was organized and somebody else could look at your code and it made sense. Like it wasn't wasteful and you weren't going in circles.
Readability is such a big thing in programming. One of the things that I like try to instill on programmers, and like, this is partially my opinion, partially just wisdom gained, but like sometimes efficiency takes a backseat to readability. It becomes way more important sometimes, depending on if you're working on back-end or front-end type stuff. but like it becomes much more important that another programmer can come in, look at your code, and understand what you're trying to accomplish.
So you can keep it going.
Yeah, exactly. So when you come in and you look at the code and you're like, okay, but why are you like doing this? And what are these variables? These are all weirdly named. And like now I'm entering this function that says it's doing one thing, but it's actually doing another. That actually becomes much harder to program with, because readability and the ability to be a team working on something becomes more efficient than, or more important than truly being 2 milliseconds faster.
Yeah. I mean, 'cause it's one of those things where if you're a student or if you're trying to break into the industry,
I feel weird, like just going like that.
you get in this mindset where you have to do everything yourself. You know, like, I'm going to make a game. And when you say that, you're like, I'm going to do the art, I'm going to design it, I'm going to, you know, write the code, I'm going to like everything. And you're like, oh, I've got, you know, Unity or the Unreal Engine, and that's all the tools I need. But the reality is, since I got into the industry, the only time I've ever made a game myself, and I still had help on this, is at like game jams, right?
All by yourself, just
Yeah.
lonely, like you and
That's,
you.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only situation where I've made a game that I did everything on. For the last 20 years on 40 something games, it's always a team effort, and so like the work I do is useless if other people can't take it and run with it.
Wow.
Game jams are also really good because they teach a skill that is very difficult when you're trying to make your own game, which is start simple.
Yeah.
You need to be able, that was kind of my example. It's like the first game I tried to make. I tried to make too much stuff. It was too top heavy before I made like, oh, this is actually a complete experience. Figuring out what your complete experience for your game is first becomes much easier to iterate on your game and make it much bigger. If you have like the core loop is what it's called, you can always build on your core loop and make more fun and more stuff, which is what all games become.
And now we go back to the question: how do you find your core loop early? How do you find fun, man? That's a hard one. I hate that one. Oh my god.
Sometimes they sprinkle it on you, and sometimes they don't. I mean, and that's one of those things that's really difficult about games. Is you can work really hard and put a lot of effort into things that aren't fun, and it's frustrating. Like sometimes you just stumble on something, you're like, oh wow, that just feels good. Like this is awesome. You know what? I could make a whole game out of this one mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many games that are like that.
Do you think that there are some kind of assets or tools nowadays that can help you out to do that? I mean, I understand we got the marketplaces, Unity, Unreal marketplaces, but something related to just game design or finding the core, finding the fun, some sort of tool. What are your favorite tools, guys? Because I know that you come from different like disciplines somehow, and that would be interesting to know too. For me, I don't know.
I mean, this comes from having. He really wanted you to answer. He's like, Stone, talk up.
No,
You're so
sorry,
quiet all the time.
I'm just trying to
This guy.
to make things
I'm very visual.
This comes partly from having gone to a 4-year education in game design,
Yeah.
and then subsequently having taught game design. But before I got into those academic programs, I had never thought about like what makes a game. Like I hadn't ever taken like the games that I enjoy or whatever and broken them down into not only like what genre, like, oh, this is an RPG, this is whatever, but like what elements inside those genres the games possess. Like is this game more reliant on memory skills or on Twitch skills? Like I hadn't thought about that because those things appeal to very different audiences. Like even inside of Twitch gaming, like some things are you memorize and repeat, and other things are you react, on the fly. And those are separate types of games.
Totally.
And so taking a solid look at what it is you really enjoy about the games that you like is going to be a thing that helps you build a set of tools that you can use to find the fun in your own ideas. Because a lot of times, like a really great, like really good feeling game is just a matter of tweaking one little thing in a known formula.
Interesting.
I think a lot of times people complicate what they're doing with what they think they're supposed to do. And sometimes it's good to just sit back and just think, what makes you happy? What's fun? Why are you doing it in the first place? For me, RPGs and MMOs were a fit because I liked Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop games. I like armor and weapons and old cultures and weird languages, and it just fits together. And so I like when I would go to bed, my dad would tell me stories about mythological characters and demons and angels, and every time I'd see a homeless person, he'd say it could be an angel.
The one with the snake.
Yeah, there's all kinds. Every day, my dad gave me stories and would make stuff up, and that became my inspiration. So for me, that's my portal into the world of gaming. And everybody has to find what makes them happy. Maybe it's casual games, or maybe it's combat games, or head-to-head or versus sports games. But starting with what you love, and then looking at what you enjoy, and then looking at people who also enjoy that do that well, because often, like, some games come out where they're revolutionary and they change the industry. And I'm going to try to avoid naming games in particular, but just stick to the topic. But there's a very famous game that when it came out, everybody was playing it. They loved it. It was a well-known MMO. And the people that were on the team I talked to, and they said, our game barely has any polygons. We don't have normal maps. We didn't do anything fancy, but we made sure we just made it fun for me, for my daughter, for the family. Like, the guy who was in charge of that game, he told me, I used to be on EverQuest, and became very traditional.
Because when that other more popular simplified game came out, we were both working at this other studio that was getting their butt kicked.
But the guy told me, he said, I'm not caught up in tradition and rules. If I want to give gunpowder to dwarves, if I want to make it fun, he said, I want a game that I can come home and play with my family and my friends.
And that's it.
And he just started with that, and that was the game that surpassed our game. And so I think staying relevant to just what's fun, and we can always make it prettier, but you can't neglect your foundation. Why do you do games in the first place? To have a better life, to have enjoyment,
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to say, like, I am unfortunately going to name some names, but I think Blizzard does this a lot.
Yeah.
He figured it out, Stone.
Yeah, I figured it out. But, what I'm going to give the example of is, it works a lot. It works a lot for them. That's what Overwatch is. It's based on another game, but they simplified it.
Yes.
They took out things like, ammo. Why is there ammo, right? Like, when the most efficient way to reload my guns is to just die, like, what is the point of ammo, right? And, sometimes it really works for them. They've had huge successes on this kind of stuff, but it doesn't always work. I mean, I think their Heroes of the Storm game is a great example of, people still want to play the more complicated version of that game. They want to play the Dota or the LoL, It doesn't always work.
I love Heroes of the Storm, man.
Sometimes it makes you so much more success. I like it better too.
I like it better, to tell you the truth. I love it.
I like it better too.
Yeah.
Because Hearthstone is, it's like a simplified version of Magic.
Sergeant Morales,
They
bro.
built an online community in 2 or 3 years that was bigger than the one that Magic Online had been trying to build for a decade.
Crazy,
It's
huh?
crazy, yeah.
It's crazy.
You just take the core concept, find that core concept, simplify it, and iterate on it a little bit, but just make it really good and smooth.
The tricky word, simplify it.
But
Oh my God, simplify it. Oh my God.
How do you find out if your idea is worth investing a bunch of time in?
Well,
Because I know that as an artist, there's this inner voice that tells you, oh, it's not good enough yet. Just wait until you work on it a little bit more, and then we'll show it to someone. But the reality is, the sooner you can put your ideas in front of your peers, in front of other game developers, like another game developer is not going to crap all over something that you're trying to make better. They're going to help you, right? So don't be afraid.
Some of them, some people is always crapping shit just because that's the way they're
But I
rolling.
think what Brad's underscoring is that there's something to be said about taking chances and doing a lot of things, like pursuing your. Sometimes I think people get in a fearful place where
Okay.
they want it to be perfect. Is it done?
Yeah, well, yeah. Oh, she has a question.
Question.
Do you prefer light or dark environment to develop?
Do I want?
Do you prefer what?
Dark, yeah, environment to develop.
Well,
Just, are we
okay,
talking
so-
about the studio?
No,
So
they're talking about art in the background's art. So for me personally, I like to work in dark environments because my personal preference is to have a dark scene, and then I follow a lot of old traditional painting rules, which classic oil painting teaches you not to use pure black or pure white. They want you to, even in the shadows, to have some rich color. So when I really lower the light level down in a level like in a cave, I'll just put just enough light so that you can see the shape, and then I'll use fire or really soft glows. All these things appeal to me. I like the color of black light and things fluorescing, like really vibrant colors in moody environments. But that's just my own personal preference. If I flip it and work on daytime scenes, I mean, I'm always looking at nature, and my favorite times of day is sunrise and sundown. But something's magical about late at night, like if there's a concert or a party or the light shows, there's a lot of things hidden in the dark, and I love just revealing just enough of something from the shadow that is this a dragon, is this a person, is it the bushes, and creating a little mystery and suspense is
It's
what
exciting
I
all by
yeah.
itself, right?
Yeah, but everybody's different. So my personal opinion, I like painting dark with rich colors.
You want to hear a scientific answer?
Ah, go
So,
for it.
are you familiar with the concept of gamma correction? Okay.
No.
In the real world, we have a wild spectrum of light, from the absence of light, which is pure black, up to the brightness of the sun, which if you even just look at it for a moment, you're going to cause yourself eye damage.
Mm.
Now, in video games, when you're reproducing those things on a screen, the most white you can make something is just 255, 255, 255. It's white. Everything above that is flipped. The surface of the sun and a sheet of notebook paper are functionally the same intensity in a video game. And so to reproduce the world around us, we have to kind of weight the way we reproduce colors. And so in video games, on television, in movies, the blacks and the shadows take up a much larger spectrum of the color band than the whites do. That's what gamma correction is. It's basically this big curve where everything down here is exaggerated so we can stretch out the blacks and the shadows, and everything over here is compressed.
Oh.
So the whites are just like, we can't do a whole lot with the whites. We're not going to set your TV on fire. And so if you want to have very dynamic looking environments, if you want to have a lot of depth in 3D to your environments, you have to really focus on the darks, the shadows, and those gray tones, because if you try to do it all in brightness, you're only dealing with less than a quarter of the dynamic range.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
There's another question. You want to hear it?
No. Oh yes, of course.
The second one. What's the best thing about working with Mexicans?
Oh, that's
Oh,
not
man.
fair. That's not fair. He could have asked like the worst things, and that would be a bit more
I'll
authentic.
take the question.
But then you gotta talk about the worst things.
No.
Because
I'm
it
gonna
becomes
turn it.
like
I'm gonna
lip
turn.
service
No, this
about
is a
how
good
cool
question
is
for me.
everything over here.
No, this is a good question.
Who's more handsome?
Who's more handsome, right?
No, this
Go ahead.
is what I can say. My family's from Texas. They never moved. They were native, then they became Mexican, then the boundary changed to the U.S. So we're all three in my family. I'm indigenous, but I'm indigenous from a place that was Mexico. So I'm both. I'm American, I'm native, indigenous tribe, and I do see some distinct things here that I'm in love with. All I can say is that since I've been here, everybody feeds me constantly. I literally, I'm like afraid to show my stomach in the camera because I have probably eaten 5,000 or 6,000 calories a day. Like everyone's so
For
generous.
sure.
Even in just the remote areas here where it gets a little dangerous, they're still nice to me. Everyone's laughing. For me, I just feel like everybody here is like my family. They're warm. They're very affectionate. To me, it's like working with family. I just like being here. The temperature is perfect for me, everything. I don't have anything bad to say about
So to put it into kind of like to give my answer some grounding, I spent most of my life in the Southern California game development scene, which is incredibly competitive because there's studios everywhere. Just in the Irvine area, you've got
That's crazy.
all of the big three. And so coming down to Guadalajara and meeting the team here at Amber, the thing that blew me away was how open the team was, the level of humility, and the eagerness to learn new things. I mean, there's a certain ego among some game developers, the people who've been in 2 or 3 years, and they think they're like the hot whatever. Like, I know how to do my job or whatever. And I haven't encountered really any of that here. Like people, I've been like, hey, I've got this idea. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that with me. And even when my ideas are stupid, they're like, oh, I can see why you would think that. But here's why we're doing it this way. And not in a way that like was shaming at all. And so it's been great to just work with people that have that sense of humility about their work, but are also like really curating their talents. So I've just been so impressed.
That was one of the best game designers I had ever worked with. Like, you know, even as like a junior, you know, to the industry and all that, like, you know, as someone that works in the games industry, it's a passion industry. Everyone there wants to play games, has played games, knows what they think is a good game, right? So one of the best game designers I ever worked with, you know, I would come to him with like ideas, and sometimes they, you know, legitimately weren't good ideas. But he was always so good at being like, oh, you know, like, I see where you're coming with that idea. Here is why it doesn't work for this thing. Like, he would go through it with me, and by the end, I'd be like, wow, you're totally right. You know, like, that wouldn't work for the game, but it would work for this other game over here. And, like, I don't know, just that, you know, taking the time, explaining, you know, what's going on, and, like, you know,
Instead of just putting you down.
Like, no, we're not doing that. Get out of here. Go do your job. You know, like,
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah.
But in a nutshell, it's warmth. Everybody, in one word, warmth. Everybody's warm.
Yeah,
Everybody,
warmth. That's interesting,
yeah, everybody's
right?
got color. Everybody's got.
Well, the cool thing about warmth is that it actually starts giving you confidence, and it allows you to show competence, right? And maybe if you're warm enough, you get that confidence. Maybe you might be an idiot and you're not competent enough, and you can still go like, yeah, he's pretty nice, but he's an idiot, right? I mean, but you got a way to go. But the cool thing is the warmth. Yes, I agree with that. But I would also, before going to the next question, I would also like you guys to tell the bad things. You know, the bad things about working.
The bad things?
Yeah. I mean,
It's just meat and cheese. I want to eat vegetables. That's the
No.
It's going to kill me if I don't eat some vegetables.
Bring over the Canadian too. Come on. What? Married with a Mexican? Get over here.
Yeah, my bad things. I need
Talk
some-
about the bad things too. I mean, bring some space. Hey, get over here. Bring some space. Bring him a chair.
Want to squeeze in here?
Yes. Come on. Introduce yourself, man. Oh, bring him a chair. Yeah, bring him a chair. That's
All
just
right,
like,
there we go. I like you.
yeah, I like you, but
And I'll tell you the next bad thing about it.
yeah.
There aren't enough of them in our industry.
There you go.
To me, like that's
Oh,
terrible.
that's interesting.
Yeah, like I want more people that I can relate with to work with. There's an immediate kinship and camaraderie that I experience because culturally I'm similar to them. So that's the worst thing about Mexican culture right now is that we just need more.
Wow.
And so when we come down here, I'm trying to mentor and train and enable other Hispanic people to rise up and overcome these boundaries.
Right.
So I mean, that, for me, that resonates heavily because I grew up really poor, really struggling, and so I know what it's like to start very from the bottom. I used to live in a home with 15 other guys. They're all field workers, and we were in one room. It was abandoned. Like I understand what it's like to sleep on the street or in the park or to go hungry and to go these things. The things that I see as common struggles, I completely relate with. So for me, I'm about empowerment and letting go of the old story that we tell ourselves that it's us against them and looking at the world as a global market and now seeing yourself in a new idea. You're not Mexican, you're part of this planet and you have something to offer and you were made for a purpose and a reason. What is that reason? If it's in games, let's activate it. If it's something else, there's people here who have made such a difference and they're not game developers. Like Nena, she just brings food. She makes sure I got my COVID test today. By the way, we got tested before this interview. So just in case anybody's wondering, we're still following the protocols. But yeah, I mean, everybody who follows what they're born to do will make a difference. So.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean,
I mean,
just want to keep it authentic, you know. There's got to be. I mean,
Well,
I love
you
it.
wanna keep
Like,
it-
lip service, everything over here is super awesome. Get over here. There's a bunch of shit that's happening too, and we got a lot of problems here. And now, introduce yourself and say why you're here and what you do.
I'm Dave. I'm part of the UI teams. Why I'm here? Because I want to create some cool ass games.
That's cool. Well, what are you doing right now with us? UI, right? You
UI.
said it already. But tell us the truth. Why are you here, man?
Why are you
Here in Mexico.
Yeah.
Because I fell in love with Mexico and I fell in love with a Mexican woman.
Yeah. So be careful, Mexican woman. They can trap you. Bring you over. Oh, thanks for being here.
The biggest downside I've seen down here
Mhm.
is just kind of I guess it's the lack of opportunity. There are so many people here that before coming to Guadalajara, I had no idea what the talent pool was like down here.
Yeah, nobody knows.
But the people I've met, like they can hold up in any studio around the world, right?
Right.
But why do they have to be somewhere around the world? I mean, we live in a global community where all the publishing happens online, all the communication happens online. It doesn't matter. Like we're in the middle of this COVID thing. It doesn't matter if
Right.
I'm here in Mexico or barricaded in my office.
We got a Canadian, a guy from Uruguay, a Colombian guy. We got people from everywhere right now in the studio.
Up until COVID, there were some big boundaries, but I think
Yeah.
the playing field has been given some big advantages to people that are isolated or feel disadvantaged. Like these excuses of barriers are going away, and we'll be left with what we choose for ourselves soon. At this rate. So
That's gonna be interesting, huh?
there's a lot of excuses. I was poor. I was this. I was that. I'm the wrong color. I didn't go to the right school.
I'm the brown color.
Yeah,
That's a good one. That's a good one.
whatever your reason is. Like at some point, the narrative the story that we make is the story we live. So we need
Right.
to make our own story.
I love it. Another question. You were saying?
Yeah. Do you consider that it's important to have a lot of years of experience to create a good video game?
Nope.
Gotta start somewhere.
Absolutely.
Yep,
Look
if
at all
you-
the indie games out there.
If
Like
you,
some of the most successful indie games are done by people who have very little experience. I mean, like, you look at something like Hollow Knight, which I absolutely love. Those guys taught themselves how to program to make that game. Right?
Amazing.
So, like,
Right.
no, you can definitely do it. It's about inspiration.
at the last studio I was at,
And balls.
I was
You gotta finish
and you
that.
gotta
I'm
have-
sorry, I had to say it, man, because you gotta say it.
I was interviewing this guy for a QA position because I needed to hire for QA immediately. And during the interview, I was like, "So, what's your experience, with game development?" He's like, "Oh, I mean, I've made a couple games. Here they are on Steam." I was like, "Doug, I don't have a game on Steam. You've got 4 games on Steam? Are you kidding me right now?" So I hired him for QA, and then the very second we had an opportunity, I promoted him into production.
And that's it.
Yeah.
That's how it started.
If you want to make games, make games. We've got better tools that are available now, free tools. Like literally all of the tools that 15 years ago cost $1 million just to touch are free now. It's mind-blowing.
It's mind blowing.
It's more about the drive to do it, right?
Yeah.
The focus and the commitment to it.
Like if you roll into an interview and you're like, "Hey, I want to make games." And they're like, "Cool. Like, what have you done?" And you're like, "Nothing." They're going to be like, "Well, thanks for wasting my time. Come back when you've actually done something." And the something doesn't have to be at a major studio. It doesn't have to be. I mean, like realistically, my very first game that got me in the door with some people at Epic was I used the Unreal Engine 2.5. Yeah, because 3 was still prototype. And we recreated a scene from the movie Death Race, me and a couple friends. And it wasn't really even a game. It was just like, "Hey, look we figured out how to make a car drive, and then we figured out how to make the car take damage. And look, I can do normal maps." And that was enough to get me a bunch of interviews.
And I think it's important to say that you don't need to make an entire game to be able to make it in games. I've never made an entire game. My skill is all in visual arts. There's so many things about game development that I've learned about, but when I started in games, I was originally I worked at a pet store, I worked with animals, I just happened to live next to a big animal hospital, I grandfathered in and became a technician. Next thing I know, I'm learning from some of the best surgeons in the world, and I wanted to be a veterinarian. And I was struggling through it, but I wanted games a little bit more, and I just drew and drew. I didn't have a bunch of fancy tools or anything. I had a marker and paper, and when I went to the interview, I just laid all my pictures out. And the person that hired me told me, he said, "We hired a lot of people who have technical skills, but we can train people technically pretty quickly. You've demonstrated that you have raw talent and soul and a really solid understanding of what you're good at and how to make that shine. And I can't teach that very easily to other people.
We
He
can
says,
teach you to push the buttons, but
Well, we
not
can't-
what's behind
we can
them,
teach your
right?
hands, but we can't teach your heart.
Wow.
And so
Games is such a rough industry to be in the sense of you have to be invested. You have to love it. Like if you want to make money, go be a bank manager.
Right.
Right? Like go get into like day trading or whatever. Like if you want to make a bunch of
That
money
was
as
fancy. Now our cases make hot dogs or
Yeah.
taquitos or whatever.
I mean, but there's easier ways to make money. Because games, you're gonna work a lot, and you're gonna put a lot of yourself into it. And so, like, if you are saying, "Hey, I want to be a programmer," I hope you are programming all the time because you love it. Like every spare moment, you're doing something, you're creating. Because if you don't have that kind of drive, you're gonna get burned out in the industry like really fast. And it happens to, I don't know, maybe 60% of the people who come in 2 or 3 years out of like really being asked to give it their heart, and they're out.
Burning out. What a phrase.
So, yeah,
Guys,
I love
let's
it.
just talk about burnout. I mean, to tell you the truth, how do you manage your energy? Dude, I've seen you working like crazy, man. It's just like, how do you manage that? How do you manage to just not burn out? And, we all know that this is a marathon, and I understand that, our heart is what keeps us driving forward, but the long hours, maybe, the wife, the kids, the whatever, man. How do you manage to balance all that shit? Is there like some sort of tip that you would like to give to our people?
I think I've learned the hard way. I'll let them answer too in a sec. But when I started off, I burned out hard. They were working me 100 to 112 hours a week.
Oh,
And
dear.
I had to do 2 projects concurrently. I worked on Eon Flux and Deep Space Nine, and it ruined my life. I learned a lot, but I didn't know how to set boundaries and deal with people, and I felt vulnerable. And so everybody who's really trying to break through, they go through this challenge. My conclusion after almost 25 years is this: you surround yourself with people that have meaning for your life. Bad company corrupts good character. And if you're going to be strong and last anything in life, you're going to need to find people who sharpen you. Take the time to surround yourself with people, because the meaning of life is always found in our relationships, not in the money, not in the game. All as much as these things are interesting, you need to get to the very heart of, if you want to survive and endure hardship, you're going to need that close knit community. So whoever your close friends, build them up, improve them. If they're tearing you down or getting in trouble, you're not going to last long. Even the best gamers I know, they got really close friendships. And I know a guy who's a famous producer. He married his wife from playing games. So you can find friends anywhere. That's the beauty of games. You can get online. That's why I like MMOs so much. You can talk to people and you build this bond.
Right.
It breaks boundaries.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point, because really having support systems is what's going to help you from getting totally burned out, and that's having people to turn to when you are having like those tough times. I mean, if you know how like a flock of geese fly in like that V pattern, so that like one goose is up there working hard and he's breaking the wind, and everybody else is in the jet stream, and when he gets tired, he drops back and somebody else starts doing the hard work. I mean, that's the way really good teams work. Is like when somebody's getting burned out, you don't let them just have their heart explode. You take some of the work off their plate. I'm not a great example of work-life balance,
Me neither.
but the way that I've made it work is my wife knows I'm going to work ridiculous hours, and even though like this milestone in the grand scheme of like my life or even the game itself is like basically inconsequential. Like nobody dies if we miss a milestone, right? like bridges don't collapse, babies don't, die or whatever. But like to me, I'm like, I have to make the milestone. Like there's no way I've never missed one, And so she gets that and she accepts it. That's just kind of part of my own personal brand of crazy. And we take a lot of vacations, work like crazy, make a milestone, and then take a week and like we're Disney fanatics, so we go to Disneyland, and just check out of the real world. And so she knows that I'm going to give her enough like time, and so that's the way I balance it. Like, yeah, I guess my work-life balance is making sure that my wife stays happy. If she's happy, I'm balancing it correctly.
What's your take on the same one, right? Right, yeah.
You gotta make time for the moments, At the end of the day, you always spend some quality time, right? An hour, 2 hours. At the end of the day, you gotta make that little time where you can. And maybe we stay up a little bit later, but we talk about each other's days and stuff.
But it's important to remember that we make games, but to have a life. Our life is not just games. We have so many other things that make the game experience fulfilling, but without somebody to share it with, it's meaningless. You
Right.
know? Like if I build a pocket level and I level it up, it's no fun until I'm on a leaderboard with everybody else. It's your value is derived by comparison and relationship. So, staying connected, and we all have different boundaries, different ideas, but if those emotional relationships are like a bank, don't only take, we need to invest back in. They take nurture. It's the same as growing plants. When they say, I'm terrible at plants, well, don't be terrible with people.
I'm terrible at plants.
I was so bad.
You hit me hard with that
life
one.
Balance when I was doing my graduate project. I started having health problems, and I went to the doctor, and he's like, "I've got a very special prescription for you." I was like, "Oh no, what is this?" He's like, "You need to take care of yourself. Go get a dog." He's like, "It will remind you to go for a walk.
Exactly what I did.
It'll remind you to eat regularly." And
literally, I went and got a dog, so I have to force myself to leave my screen.
yeah.
Take him for a walk. It's really.
Wow,
And so now
interesting.
he's 14 years old.
What about
Captain
you?
Austin.
Yeah,
What-
I think everyone's kind of hit on the core concept, and even you said it like with your opening question of how do you not burn out? How do you find that balance? That's it. It's balance. You need to like find some other thing to do, some other thing that makes you relax in the face of all this like stress that you have to feel. And like you brought up an excellent point too. Like we work in such a passion industry. This is for many of us like our hobby is playing games, right? And we're making games. So it feels like, oh, we should be having a good time all the time, right? Because like we're making what we care about. But the thing is, it is still a job. It is so much work to do. So you need to find something else out there that gives you happiness, that gives you relaxation, that gives you that balance that you really need to do.
Right.
Ultimately, if you tie your own sense of self-worth or your own sense of accomplishment to the game industry, like I've got sour news for you. You're going to be an unhappy person that leads a sad life. The reason being is games are volatile. Productions, like I've worked on more games that did not get released than did get released. If I was carrying that like weight around my neck, like as failures or whatever, oh man, I would be, jumping off of the bridge by now. But the reality is those experiences led me to the really great ones. And so it's one of the biggest differences between people who are more senior and people that are just coming into the industry is the way they're connected to their work. I take pride in like my team finishing something great. I don't care about like if they like a design I put forward or like an effect that I created. Like I just accept that games are an iterative process, and 99% of the stuff that you do create is going to get tweaked, thrown away, revised, whatever. Like if you don't know how much concept art gets made for games and thrown away, like it's astounding.
And
like,
there's nothing bad about it.
because the concept art that you see from like Game Informer or that gets posted at E3, that's not concept art. Those are marketing pieces.
And I think this leads to a new question, which is, she has.
Nope.
Okay, let me say this one thing, and we'll do it.
I have the counterweight for that last question.
Okay.
What about strategy, guys? Because I mean, there's this book about The Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell and all that shit.
Yeah.
So you
Strategy for managing your career.
strategy for managing your career, but actually being good at something.
Well,
Because I've met so many people that they're so well balanced and they go to yoga and all that shit, but they're mediocre at best.
That's the paradox.
There's a lot of
this.
Wrong. That's not balanced anymore to me.
That's
like
weird,
you're
right?
Too far on the other side.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, if
But
you're
there's like a
You're
delicate.
signaling to
Well,
seem
but
like
we're
you've got
talking-
a better life.
We're talking
then
about
there's
two
something
different things.
core that is rotten.
I think we're talking about two different areas. How you manage your internal mental health is not the same thing as how you perfect your craft and skill.
Yeah.
And so there's a discipline and a practice. It's all, some people think of it as a paradox, but it's how do I become the best at doing something and simultaneously live a fulfilling life? This thing seems to consume me, and this thing pulls me away, and so they both need to be nurtured concurrently. And I think if you have a fulfilling, stable life, you have more power to last longer doing a specialized life. A lot of times, artists, when they're younger, become very emotional and subject to their emotions. So they only draw when they're inspired, and they only draw when they
Oh
have the
yeah, that
mood.
sucks.
My instructor, I found out later, painted for the Vatican. And so he was considered one of Victor Casados is his name.
Oh my
He was
god.
considered one of the best living fine artists in the world. But he was really humble, an old man. And on my first day, I didn't know anything. They brought me in the class because I was poor and I was eligible. He did goodwill teaching, and he happened to teach me to give me a leg up. And he told me this. He said, as an artist, we earned that title. We are an apprentice. And he says, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, they have apprentices that take years and perfect their craft. And when they're worthy of the title, like saying you are a surgeon, you could be a nurse right now, you could be a doctor, but to get to that title, you earn it with practice and commitment to your craft. And he said, when we get the canvas, you are the god of that canvas. You exert your will on it, and if somebody takes it, you can recreate it on command. You don't have that control, then you're still apprenticing, you're still learning. And that mindset is the old school mindset that built many masters, many famous people with that logic. And so we have to, in jujitsu, they have and I love jujitsu and I'm part of that community. They say better to learn one move, practice it 1,000 times, than to do 1,000 new moves one time. Yeah, mastery over one thing and building that brick, and then putting another
Yeah,
brick
yeah, motherfucker.
and another brick.
Love it.
We want to perfect ourselves as best we can, but then we still sometimes need to go get exercise to lower our blood pressure.
Makes sense. Cool. Next question.
Okay.
It's been almost an hour, right? Thank you guys for
Just
this.
7 minutes, guys. Which is the most important part of the teamwork for you guys?
What's the
The most important part of teamwork.
Yes.
Of the
Any
teamwork.
team that you're on is going to be composed of a lot of different individuals who have different priorities, who come from different backgrounds, who carry different baggage, who had different amounts of sleep the night before. The most important thing about teamwork is understanding that your point of view and the thing that you want to say and getting like your point across is not necessarily the most productive thing. Like the best teams are teams that listen to each other.
Also trust, right? Like I need to trust that I can make a mistake and not feel shamed for it.
Yeah, I mean, you need to build an environment. If you want to have a great studio where the team gets further than just a bunch of individual people contributing, in the dark or whatever, it's knowing that you're not auditioning for your job every day. You're not going to get fired if you screw up once. In fact, if people are afraid to make mistakes, they're going to cap themselves down to like the level of production where they safely know they can always execute it 100%. And that's low. That's only a fraction of what people are truly capable of.
And I think
Go ahead.
I think one thing that's makes the experience different is where you're at in the hierarchy of a company. A lot of times the company culture and behavior is driven from the top down. If the owner, like, you're super friendly and warm and easygoing, he always plays music in the studio to make sure people are eating, and that puts a lot of people at ease, and it builds a home or an identity. Some bosses don't do that. They're like, you're out in 2 hours, you're done, and like it's just chopping people's paychecks as small as possible. And so for someone low entering into a company, I think to establish themselves, they need to build strong bonds socially with the people. If you are doing it alone, no matter how good you are, and you don't have the support of some of the team, you begin to feel like in your head, wondering, second guessing yourself, making friendships. But if you're higher up, you need to be able to have people that will tell you the truth, even if it's uncomfortable, so that you can know how to check yourself. So each position brings a different level of power and a different weakness with it. So, but it still comes back to quality relationships.
What was that? Cool. Yeah, well, now we're back into culture and the importance of culture within a studio. That's an amazing subject, guys. And now that we're in this program in order to try to design the best culture for the Amber of the future, wow, that's freaking hard, man. I mean, it's just like, education is based on repetition, and sometimes you feel like you're the culture amboy, and sometimes I feel like the asshole that's got to be on repeating like everything all day long, and every now and then you still find just confused by someone asking you, so we got this value of play, which means freedom to innovate. So where are we innovating right now, guys? And you go like, oh my god. So all right, how should I answer this correctly and not mess it up? So
Well,
you've been in different cultures. You've been in
if
a
you,
lot
if
of
you,
studios.
but just think about what you said. Culture. Think of any culture that you respect, and then think how long has that culture been around. Culture takes time to grow,
Right.
and it doesn't grow with just overnight.
Nope.
You can set out the best ideas, but if you don't take care of the infrastructure, if you don't take care of the people, other things start to occur that pollute the culture. Good or bad, something's going to grow, and so it takes a lot of love and a long-term commitment to shape a studio. So consistency and like the root word of integrity is integer. So being a whole number,
Integer.
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 So when they say you have integrity, they say you're a whole, you're reliable, you're consistent. Whole numbers are easy to multiply and work with. Fractions can kind of get a little crazy. So when somebody has two sides of their personality, I think they really work against culture. But if you're known for having good integrity, for loving people, for keeping your word, for being able to follow through stuff, it brings a foundation of stability that building culture on top of can be supported by. So I feel strongly that who's in power really shapes a lot of that. But we also know that in history, artists are usually the first ones to get killed. And so artists are the key holder to the cultural pulse of it.
Which is
So
true.
it's a strange balance of top to bottom. So time, patience, and
And also
integrity.
at this guys, I mean, also going global and maintaining that culture. Making you feel at home at Amber, Mexico, and Amber, Montreal, and Amber. It's just, oh God, it's just like I kind of wonder sometimes, am I doing it right? Are we just, is my people? Are we doing it right? So you
Well,
just-
like, look at this. We were all working on Zoom, and we didn't know each other very well.
Nope.
We got here. The first thing we did is we went and go eat.
Yeah.
As soon as we ate,
That
we
was
started
it.
joking. As soon as we joking, that was the missing glue for us. We needed to be together.
To
Now,
everybody who's watching this right now, thinking about like what culture means, like Amber's super invested in culture because it's going to dictate the future of what the company becomes.
Yep.
And to give you an idea of where Amber's at, the first time I walked into the studio in Guadalajara, I was floored. I had no idea that a studio like this existed in like the whole of Mexico, Southern America, like all of this. This studio is nicer than the building I worked at when I was at Disney. It's infinitely nicer than what we had at Sony or at EA. And the way that the support staff takes care of people, it's so much more familial. It's not like at Sony, I worked out of a cubicle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how are you going to build culture when everybody literally has walls around their head?
Like a horse.
And to everybody who's watching this, like, okay, we have to wrap it up soon. But like, when you get hired at a game studio, like if they bring you in for an in-person interview, they've probably already decided that you have the skills to do the job. They're bringing you in person because they're wondering if they want you to be part of their culture. Like, I'm basically hiring a new friend who's going to like sit in the seat next to me for the next, 2 to 5 years.
Right, I'm spending more time with you than with my mom and my sister.
Yeah.
Holy shit, I'd rather that
you-
better be
you
good.
better be a
right.
cool guy.
right. All right, so we're closing this up, right? And I'm gonna do it in Spanish. Muchas gracias a todos los que vinieron. Esto es una lucha más. Muchas gracias a todos los que están aquí. Gracias, Amber Rose. Muchas gracias y ya saben. Píquenle al botón de suscribir, píquenle a la campanita. Si les gustó, compártanlo con los amigos, si no con sus enemigos. Aquí los esperamos. Vengan por los videojuegos y quédense por las mamadas. Muchas gracias. Thanks.